Alright, how's it going, guys? This is Matthew here. Things are going to be a little bit different for this video. Hallu is what you might call indisposed at the moment, so you guys have to deal with just me for today. Don't worry, he's going to be back for next week, but you'll have to bear with me because for this video, I basically just prepared I haven't really prepared anything about playoff implications or anything along the lines of that. I just kind of tried to focus on analyzing the games that happened this week. Anyways, that all being said, let's just get into it, boys. So at number 16, we have Chris. Now, let's start off this list with me complaining about movesets. That sounds like a great place to start. So, I kind of disagree with the Miltank set that we have right here. The team total bought in comparison to Madi's team was relatively very slow overall. The only means of speed and control that he really had was a choice Scarf Ninetales. I also want to mention, in my opinion, obviously, that roll compression on a revenge killer is never something that really works out perfectly without hiccup. From my experiences, I see Scarf Stealth Rock, Scarf Toxic all the time in the format, and here's the thing. I'm not going to deny that it works in circumstances, but those are niche circumstances that kind of take a lot of thought process in the team builder and stuff along the lines of that. But realistically speaking here, there are very few opportunities where Tovar is ever actually going to want to click Aurora Veil over clicking an attack in this game. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. That's just a little tiny rant for you guys right there, 2 for the price of 1. What I'm getting at right here is that Tovar is relying on defensively checking some of the faster mons that he's facing up in this matchup with the Miltank, but the issue here is that the moveset doesn't really complement this role. I can understand why he brought the moves he did, I kind of can, but having Fire Punch plus Hammer Arm as his only real ways of damaging that Raikou ends up actually making this Miltank a liability for him in the long run, and it's a liability that Madi is able to exploit very easily by clicking Calm Mind. And this wouldn't be something that's so easily exploited if he was facing something Return on the Miltank, or even Earthquake on the Miltank, because that hits Tarantar as well, I guess. Or even something like Toxic. Toxic would have been a good kind of middle ground move as well. Last thing though, we really see him get flustered here at the end. He misplayed with his Ninetales, then he misplayed with his Scissor, then he misplayed with the Manaphy, all in the course of just kind of a few turns, almost consecutive turns. So I'd really like to see Chris kind of calm down, focus on the game when things start going south. And it's like they say, you know, it ain't over till it's over. But that's all I gotta say about Chris. I don't actually have the records pulled up right here, so that's, yeah, that's the thing right there. Anyways, at number 15, we got Cheese, and Cheese here at number 15 is primarily due to kind of his record in the past, because this week he actually came out with the W. I'd really like to say he's starting to improve, but it's really hard to make that call based solely off of this game. He had some interesting techs, he definitely had a lot of ways to pressure that Skarmory, and that really opened the door for things like the Stoutland in the end stages of the match. So, not really going to say a lot about stuff here, because David, his opponent, I've actually got a lot to say about that matchup right there in David's analysis. But anyways, so moving on, number 14, we've got Blake, and Blake, this right here is a classic example of underestimating a Pokemon right here. It's a little bit different, I suppose, because he did have the Metagross going into this matchup, but the way he played his Metagross was way too loosely, I guess you'd say. Now, you have to kind of understand from team matchup what things are going to be a problem, what things you need to preserve to make sure that those Pokemon don't get out of hand. And like, I don't really want to get into him not being prepared enough for an Articuno, because that sounds kind of like a meme to say, especially like I said, when he did have a Metagross that he brought, but this really wouldn't have been a problem if he had brought like Stone Edge on Crocodile, or even if he'd been a setup Mew, a Nasty Plot Mew, something along the lines of that, or even if he'd been a little bit more strict with pressuring the hazards. Overall, this is what I think, right? I think Moxie has been playing offense for kind of such a long time that he felt really out of his element here, bringing kind of some of the more bulky mons, like Melodic, like the Metagross, even like the Mew. So I really hope in the future to see him get a little bit more comfortable with what he brings, maybe do a little bit more practicing with different playstyles, because he really, like I said, felt very out of his element. That all being said, let's move on to number 13, and number 13 is David. So, as I mentioned, David, he really let the Skarmory as well as the Cresselia get pressured very heavily. And, like, this was really his own fault. Like, that's all I can really say. It really could have been avoided. I guess that's my opinion, but I really think that it's his own fault, and this could have been kind of avoided in a sense. I really hate Here's the thing, okay? A little bit of a rant. I really hate seeing people click screens just for the sake of clicking screens, especially on kind of more balanced playstyles like this. I really don't like it because, like, his opponent had no troubles weakening a Cresselia that never clicks Moonlight. Like, it's just very, very easy to do that. Not only that, but I also hate seeing the classical ladder play where you quiver dance and then switch out the next turn. I hate that. It's a wasted turn, and David didn't have that many turns to spare. So you either commit to the setup, or you just attack for that damage. You don't kind of fuck around with the turns in between. So there's a lot of bad habits that David has, and I'd really like to see him kind of focus on breaking those habits, breaking the mold, and getting a better grasp on the battlefield in his future matches. Don't just click screens when you need to recover. Don't click quiver dance when you need to switch. Just focus on the game, try to keep, 2 turns, 3 turns ahead of what's actually going on, and if he can do that, then I can definitely see him excelling where he can go, because I don't think team building is really the issue for him. That being said, obviously, we're going to be moving on to number 12 with Adam. So this was actually a very difficult week for Adam, kind of lacking a true fire resist. Dragon Knight isn't really a fire resist in the kind of truest sense of the term, but we see here that there's literally no possible way for him to kind of deny the Life Orb Darmanitan a kill. And it really sucks for him because kind of the mon he's forced out into after, being the Hippowdon, just invites in half of Ace's teams. So the Togekiss, the Lottie, the Thundurus. So in this situation, he actually really ended up dealing with it kind of one of the best ways you could really hope for it. He lost kind of 1.5 mons. I'm counting the Choice Scarf Klefki as half a mon, in exchange for kind of equalizing the hazards and letting the Darmanitan kind of essentially die to recall. I guess he also had to commit a fake out, which is, that's definitely a resource that you have to commit. I'm not going to pretend it's not a resource you have to commit, because it is a resource you have to commit. But that being said, I think it wasn't the worst exchange for him at the end of the day. It ended up being a very close match for sure. And Adam was really good in kind of setting himself up in a situation where he could have won with the Lopunny, for sure. But at the end of the day, he just didn't factor into his plans how he would deal with that Drain Punch recovery. Now, here's the thing. Hindsight is 20/20, but let's talk about what could have happened. After you saw Togekiss start spamming Roost, a little red flag in his mind should have went off, and he should have taken some time to try to understand what his opponent was attempting to do. And, there's some perfect opportunities on turn 28, turn 29, where he could have went hard Lopunny on the Roost. Sure, it's a risk, I'm not going to pretend it's not a risk, but in a situation where you can kind of think a few turns ahead, you realize that you kind of have to make that play. Toxic damage was significant enough to the point where he could have went for fake out and then finished out with their turn because of the toxic damage, and because rocks were up, switching wasn't really the best opportunity for him. And if he had done that, the Gallade would have still been in range of return, because it wouldn't have gotten that Drain Punch recovery. Now, this in itself was a misplay on his opponent's end, because realistically, instead of spamming a Roost, he could have just spammed Thunderwave. And to cut this equation out entirely, this game is kind of equal parts kind of understanding what your opponent is trying to do, and kind of equal parts kind of taking advantage of their misplays and openings they give to you. So if he is going to start spamming Roost, you'll have to take advantage of that, and you have to kind of pull that trigger and make that switch to Lopunny if you have to. Sure, obviously, if you come into a Thunder Wave, something like that, you lose the game anyways. But we saw right here, he didn't make that switch to Lopunny, he did go for the Roost, he lost his opportunity, and he lost the game. Now, Adam's a great player. I definitely have a lot of respect for him. I definitely have a lot of respect for what we've been seeing, and I definitely think he's got a lot of opportunity in the future, but these are some things that you do have to kind of focus on in the game, and you do kind of have to identify your openings in the game and go for them. Anyways, let's move on to number 11. We've got Riz here at number 11. This was a pretty big game. Coming out with the W against Greg is really no small feat in itself. It was kind of hard to really place him much higher on the list just because of the record that he kind of inherited. So we do have him here at number 11. Now, we really get to see Yanmega shine right here, although let's be honest, Yanmega seems to shine in most of Riz's games. This mod really just proved too much for Greg at the end of the day. I really look forward to seeing what else Riz can be doing, what else he can bring to the table this season. He's in no way a coach that you can really sleep on, and I've been saying that all being said too much. I should probably think of a better transition, but let's transition right here to number 10 with Danza and Crobat for the win. So the unfortunate thing about Crobat is he really played poorly with his Landers. Like, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it, okay? I feel like he really played poorly with his Landers, which is such a busted ass mon, has so much potential in the format. Now, here's the thing, let's take a little bit of time for story time right here, okay, right? So a funny story is that when I was very new to Pokemon, I used to be absolutely paranoid about getting rid of hazards. So much so that I would actually try to defog with mons like Skarmory against things like Charizard, and you can imagine how that worked out for me. I mean, that's probably a little bit of an over-exaggeration on my part, but I feel like you guys understand what I'm getting at right here. Obviously, the situation is a little bit different, but what I'm really trying to hone in on here is that idea of tunnel visioning. And you see people tunnel vision on all different aspects of the game. And I don't think anybody, as a player, can ever really truly shake off these habits of tunnel visioning to a small extent, at the very least, on something. But in order to improve, you really gotta identify where you start bottlenecking your resources. And for Crobat, it seems like that is when it comes to dealing with hazards. And I can understand the sentiment of really wanting to get rid of hazards when you're bringing Victini Gyarados. I can definitely understand that, but if you want to go that route, on focusing on keeping that field clear of those hazards, then you really need to spend a little bit more time in the team builder, because Landorus against an Ice Punch Uxie is just not going to cut it. So that's all I can really say about Danza. Number 9, we've got Ace of Base, and I really want to highlight some specific turns right here that I think I kind of alluded to it in his opponent's analysis, but I think we saw some really smart play right here. And at first glance, you might not really notice, but Ace actually ends up sacking his Togekiss. I mentioned he started spamming Roost. I definitely think he gave his opponent an opening when he started spamming Roost, whereas he could have just spammed Thunder Wave. But he doesn't try to get extra damage off onto that Ampharos, which is really, really big. And this is really good because here's the thing. Analyzing this game, as the player, he knows two things. Ampharos is in range of the Drain Punch, but Gallade is in range of return from Lopunny. That's number 1. Number 2, after he gets Drain Punch recovered with Gallade, he will be out of range of the return from the Lopunny. And this is really some impressive line of reasoning. If that indeed was his reasoning, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be his line of reasoning when he starts spamming Roost when he's toxic. So I really like this line of reasoning. This gets the Kite seal of approval. He gets the Kite seal of approval for that play because I really liked it. I really liked watching it. Really, overall, this week was really good for him, and we really kind of get to see insights on how he plays, how he thinks, and I like what I'm seeing. Moving on to number 8, we have Trev. So we talked earlier about classic examples of when you underestimate a Pokemon, and this is another perfect example. And you tend to see this a lot with mons that are kind of traditionally looked at as a mon with a lot of kind of defensive potential. Because people tend to kind of, as I mentioned, tunnel vision on these immediate offensive threats and overlook these mons that kind of, in theory, need to get the ball rolling. And here's the thing, I think people are starting to realize more and more that Necrozma is hardly a passive Pokemon, hardly needs to, get that ball rolling. We've seen it net some incredible offensive value over the past several games. And I hope that this can really bring people to the realization that, yes, this is a mon that you have to prep for. You do have to kind of expend resources to check this Pokemon. It is one of those, it is a Pokemon where you do have to be wary of it. You can't just assume things. Now, obviously, the Flame Body burn on the Mawile kind of got the ball rolling for the Necrozma anyways, but he did get a crit when he went for the attack on the burn anyways, so I guess that kind of shows what the damage he would have been doing anyways. But anyways, we really see I feel like I talk about this with Trev every week, but we really see the speed flaws with Trev's team that, like I said, I always point this out, but Necrozma, it's not overtly known as a fast Pokemon in the format, but outspeeding Breloom, that's just too good of a benchmark against Trev's team just in general. Anytime you start forcing Trev to rely on Starmie to deal with a Calm Mind user, you're automatically coming out on top against this draft. So I hope in the future maybe we can see a little bit of kind of working around that little speed issues that he has. But at number 7 we have Merc, and this game was actually kind of my most anticipated game of the week for me. But if I'm being honest, I would not have wanted to be Merc going into this game. I don't want to say it was an unwinnable matchup for him, but it certainly was an uphill battle, to say the least. He tried to prep for the Egg Slash. We see the Nature's Madness and some other kind of cool things, but overall, it was just such a difficult hurdle for him to get past. Maybe if he'd kind of gone for multiple Nature's Madness, kind of with the Lele on the Egg Slash, maybe if he tried to take that 1v1 trade, maybe he'd be better off. But honestly, if Lele went down, how exactly was he going to get past the Mandibus? How was he going to get past the Vincoon? Kartana's not switching, and Venusaur, it gets pressure stalled. So really, this matchup, it was just way too difficult for Merc to pull through, and we really saw the effects of team matchup this game. So unfortunate game right there for Merc, and we're going to move on to number 6 with Greg. I don't know what to say for Greg right here, because I did kind of talk about stuff before. Tough loss for him this week. This in no way counts him out for playoffs. I might be a little bit biased because I've got my money riding on him getting in playoffs, but he really is a solid player. The last few turns were kind of tricky for him to navigate, but overall this game wasn't really as close as some of his previous games. Anyways though, I still definitely look forward to seeing Greg play in the future, and we're going to be moving on to top 5, the big dogs, you might say. So at number 5, we have Rob, Pogi TCG Gamer. Now, this was a difficult game for me to talk about on TCG's end, because this is just kind of a personal thing right here, but I really felt that he kind of played that early game himself a little bit sloppily. He kind of evened out into the mid game, but we never really see him get the opportunity to make any power plays or really kind of impress us, because after Moxie traded off his Metagross, he barely even had to switch out the Articuno. I kind of wish he'd scouted for the Stone Edge with the Crocodile, I kind of do, but I guess it's kind of okay because he won regardless at that point, so it's not really a big critique for me to say. So props on him in team building phase to recognize how effective an Articuno would be in that matchup, and props on him for bringing that, because a lot of people kind of shy away from the idea of bringing a defensive Pokemon as quad resist to Stealth Rocks. Anyway, so at number 4, we have Madi Brawluck, and the thing that really stuck out to me about this game was that the team was very well built this week. The Monferno lead was actually really cool on paper as kind of an anti-Veil measure, but honestly, I'm not really personally convinced on this Mon myself. He went with kind of an overall more offensively oriented team, although I guess I kind of think that every time I see Madi play, so maybe that's just the type of player that he is, but I think it was a smart decision because defensively he was very much on the back foot here at Team Preview if he tried to build defensively, just because of that Zygarde, just because of that Hoopa. So he really had to play in a way to pressure those Mons, kind of limit their effectiveness. And we see this game that he was really able to do that pretty well. He was able to handle those Mons kind of as well as you could kind of hope to handle them given the team matchup and things like that, and kind of how you can't really switch very effectively into them. One kind of gripe I have is that losing the Lottie made the Manaphy a lot more difficult to keep in check, but kind of switching around on a Hoopa is always a scary prospect. Let's be real. A lot of times I wouldn't want to kind of pull the trigger switching around on the Hoopa, especially, you know, if you have that Tyranitar in the back, you're always very wary of trying to hard switch a Tyranitar into a Hoopa. So let's be real about that. Anyway, so keeping the Monferno as a sack, I really like that. Dragon Dancing on the Hoopa switch, very good play. That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I liked it a lot. Pressuring up hazards, fantastic. All these things played a role in winning Madi the game, and he is 100% justified in being in the top 5, the big dogs right here. But speaking of big dogs, let's move on to number 3 with the Verd. I don't have anything really too crazy to say about Verd. He started off shakily against the Mawile, but Necrozma really put him in a good position. The Z-move really pulled him ahead. Now, that being said, I really have to mention this because it kind of annoyed me in the game. Not annoyed me in the sense that I was annoyed at what he really did, but if he was facing a Dazzling Gleam Starmie, this game was over. This game was a snack wrap. And I really don't like saying that, I really don't like this, not when you've kind of lost Talonflame on turn 2. I mean, granted, it was a really good play on his opponent to be able to get rid of that Talonflame on turn 2, but I don't like that. I don't like that risk with the Talonflame when you basically put your team in range of losing to Dazzling Gleam Starmie. So sure, he packed the tools he needed to win this game, and honestly, I think we're looking at kind of one of the best teams for this week, I really do, but he put himself in a potentially losing situation. And although he didn't end up paying for it this game, he has to watch for these things, because in the future these type of things will eventually kind of catch up on you. Anyways, I hope I'm not sounding too critical, because he definitely came out with the win. And after Talonflame went down, he made sure to kind of play in a way that kept his High Dragon outside of range of the Ice Beam, which means he knows how to play around his win conditions after potentially a misplay, even if that win condition is kind of hoping you're not facing a specific moveset. So he really is able to kind of stay focused on the game. That's a really, really important thing. So Bird, top 3, definitely look out for his games, because he is going to be pretty big in this the upcoming games. Now, number 2, we've got Aster. Aster, I'm a huge fan of Aster. Aster is the boy. Aster is the big dog. He's one of the 2 big dogs that we're going to be getting into. I love Aster. I love watching his games. Love watching his replays. As I say, he's just a fantastic player. One of the most prominent players in the league, just period. And certainly a terror to have to face. So kind of all of that flattery aside, what's cool about this game is Aster has actually one of the few Landorus Incarnate counters in the format with Uxie. This wasn't really a difficult game for Aster when you really look at it overall, but I really liked the tools that he brought this game, and he made it dealing with a Victini look a lot easier than it should ever have to look. So his priorities were definitely in order when it came to the hazards, when it came to dealing with a lot of things, and the team overall just synergized very well together. So yeah, Aster, watch out for him. He's gonna be pretty difficult to deal with. Now, we're here to number 1, big numero uno, right? So I really don't have much to say for Gypsy being the number 1, if that wasn't obvious enough, that I didn't say in Merc's analysis. Gypsy came out of this game very convincingly. His plays were all clean, all concise. What I really like actually about Gypsy is that he doesn't strike me as a person who recycles many things. We see cool things like the charge beam, speed boosting the Heligo. We see cool things like this all the time, and it's really sobering to kind of see him consistently hit this sweet spot between innovation and effectiveness, for sure. But anyways, that is all we've got to say. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hallu usually does this part of the video, so I hope it doesn't sound too awkward. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, let me know, and I'll see you guys next week.